As all of you know, Dr. JJ, myself, and Dr. Desiree, I've known Steve for 47 years. We were with him from the very beginnings of the experience that I had in 1973 when I was on the music faculty with Andre Previn, Leonard Bernstein, and some of the great music composers of the world. I had a mystical experience that led to the writing of the Keys of Enoch, and as a result, Steve Halpern came into our lives, and we were thrilled. From the very beginning, he showed this fantastic ability to take the music of the soul and lay the tracks of what we will call the music of ascension, the biofrequencies of the ascension process that have been overlooked by so many others who have come in as copycats some 20 to 30 years later.
And now he's the father of New Age music all over the world. He's well known, and believe me, we go everywhere. We've even done an album with him, and we're planning a new album for 2021.
That album, Sacred Names, Sacred Codes, goes back to the original ancient Hebrew Aramaic expressions, some of which I used in the experience that I had with the great teacher and master called Enoch, or Idris in Arabic, one who provided us with 70 areas of new science.
Right, and so the new one is going to be on the names of the Divine Mother. It's really fantastic, so we look all forward to that. I just want to say a little bit. In 2013, Halpern was nominated for the Grammy Award for the Best New Age Album, and really he's done, oh, thank you, yes, Deep Alpha, and he's just produced numerous CDs, and I think some of them are now downloadable, right? From
all of them.
All of them are downloadable.
I remember those first moments, Stephen, when we were with several of the great New Age thinkers up at Sonoma State in California. Your Spectrum Suite, which came out in 1975, really set the whole frequency that everybody has aspired to since that time. And Christine, for listening, all of your great work, over 50, 75 major albums plus, you have electrified the world because you are the father of authentic New Age experience. And we want to congratulate you for staying the course and having the humility as well as the harmony of recognizing the true ascension process requires a bioharmonic resonance that must be kept in body, mind, and spirit.
And that's exactly what Steven's going to be talking to you today. And it's really about the general aspects of the chakra balancing connected with brain wave entrainment and even body entrainment, how the vibration comes together. And he was one of the amazing musicians who went into the Great Pyramid and did a great album. And I think Dr. Hurtak even encouraged him and gave him some sacred names to do. We've also done that too, but we've done more of the computerized studies. Steve has done a great album. I think it's called Initiation, right, Steve?
That is correct.
For Egypt. And so he's really vibrated all over the world, his sounds, his vibrations. And when you're in the Great Pyramid, it's an amazing phenomena because it needs to have this like kind of low frequencies, I always consider. And what we found is it actually goes into undertones, not just overtones when you're in the King's Chamber. Amazing stuff.
Actually, other dimensional frequencies began to present paraphysical phenomena.
Yeah, we had light, but I mean, he has music.
One moment there was standing columnar waves of golden light that appeared in the Grand Gallery, filling the pyramid, and the Egyptian guides were really heartstruck. They didn't understand what was taking place, but we were showing that the Great Pyramid was a musical machine that could be activated by sacred codes. And so, Stephen, I also want to congratulate you for recognizing the God code of Keys of Enoch, key 202, which shows how the names of God actually give us the DNA music, actually provide for us the, shall we say, the God impression that is there on every frequency of how the nuclear genetics work.
Because we know all life is vibration and also sacred geometry like the DNA. But Steve, this is your expertise, music, vibration, life resonance. So go ahead and take it away, and we'll see you at the end of your program.
Okay, great, thank you, and hello everybody. Okay, so by way of introduction, I come to the work that I've been doing, starting off life as a musician, being very much turned on by improvisation and the concept of tuning into one's muse, which I really got turned on to in college by some of the great American poets and by great jazz musicians like John Coltrane. That set me on a path to develop my own voice and my own sensitivities, but with always an understanding that there was more to music than just the notes, just the little black dots written on white paper by dead white European musicians and composers. But also in life, I also, and being introduced by Dr. JJ and Dr. Desiree Hurtak, was kind of an anomaly in grade school when in second and third grade, I had already read all the UFO books from the library. When the librarian said, "You're too young, you can't even read all those words," and I proved that I could, but I was always interested in that aspect. Now, as I got into college and started researching and reading about the ancient uses of music, going back, certainly some of the first things I read were by Edgar Cayce, and learning about the healing temples of ancient Egypt. Always wanted to go to Egypt, had some flashbacks that I was working in the temples in ancient Egypt. And indeed, many years later, had that confirmed by Atan Ray and Kevin Ryerson, who is the medium and the psychic researcher who worked with Shirley MacLaine to help her tune into her past lives. Well, in reading about the secret powers of music, I was working mostly as a jazz rock musician. And as things worked out, the big recording session we started in New York City, coming down from University of Buffalo, did not go well. I had 2 weeks of unscheduled time. I always wanted to visit San Francisco and the West Coast, jumped on a plane, came out west, knowing very few people, having no place to stay, doors opened. And before I flew back on my return airfare ticket back to New York and back to graduate school to study the cross-cultural transformational aspects of music, very left-brain way of describing higher consciousness and healing in music, I hitchhiked down to Santa Cruz to visit the William Blake Museum, which was one of our ideological patron saints. And on the way down, the people who gave me the wonderful hitchhike, it was legal to do and safe in those days, took me up to a place that turned out to be the sister organization of Esalen, the great pioneering human potential movement institute. I was mistaken for an applicant for a job and was told to walk down the road to a sacred meditation area and then come back and meet the staff and audition for the job. Well, that was a day that changed my life. And when I was walking down the mile path to the sacred Redwood Grove, my fingers started tingling. I was aware of the energy, and this was right in the afternoon, completely normal waking consciousness, but I was aware things were changing. When I got to the clearing, I was basically made to sit down and meditate. And in that meditation, started hearing a new form of music. A couple hours later, when I came back into normal consciousness, went to the place that I was supposed to meet the staff. They were not there. I went to the wrong building, but there was a piano, and I started playing this new music. And that was when I began to understand that I was channeling something new, that what I also received during the meditation, that my work, all right, Santa Cruz, so this is up in Ben Lomond, up in the, up Alba Road, that my job was not just to hear the music and play it for myself and my friends and meditation groups, but to bring it out into the world. And as a, basically a starving student, graduate student, and then suddenly working at a room and board facility, I had no way to act upon that. There were no ways to record music as an independent in those days. Well, many things changed that day, but within a couple weeks, I was introduced, because I was now on staff, to Dr. John Lilly, Dr. Stanley Krippner, who said, "We see people meditating and relaxing to your music. But if you want to be taken seriously, you need to verify that and confirm that with scientific research, biofeedback. And Dr. Krippner said he invited me to matriculate and to apply to a new program called the Humanistic Psychology program that he was part of. Well, that was something I was not interested in because I was a musician and had no money. But then things turned around. I got accepted, I got a scholarship, I was working. And in that research, we were starting to work with brainwave research. And I also met Dr. Irving Oyl, who said, he had just come back from Russia, the first international conference on Kirlian photography, and said, we have something better than brainwave analysis. We have Kirlian photography analysis. We could take pictures of the aura around a leaf or around a person, and you could check consciousness, you could check for the healing potential that way. So that became the focus of my research. And I had no idea of doing an album at that point. But in the research, we found a phenomenal difference between the new music that I was doing that now is available as Chakra Suite, but came up first as Christening for Listening and then as Spectrum Suite when stores and magazines thought that Christening for Listening was a Christian record or a born-again record. And then some of them thought that it was a pornographic album. So I had to change the cover. And it was interesting and so perfect that the introduction was by the Hurtaks today, because at a Passover dinner in 1976, I was mentioning to them that this album cover was unacceptable to magazines and they would not let me advertise that. And just then a book falls off the bookshelf, opens up to a page that had this image, which was from a movie by John Whitney. Dr. Hurtak said, that's the cover of your new album. And he was right on. Well, that was a couple years after I met him, because in the research, we saw the fingertips and the auras of the people that were listening to my music, listening to the classical music, that we could tell right away by the difference in the auras and the electromagnetic image that there was a huge difference. But there were two individuals whose auras were like 10 times brighter and bigger than anyone else. So we called them inside and said, who are you two guys? And they said, well, we're just students at Sonoma State, but once a week, we drive down with my mother to Cal Arts, California Institute of the Arts in Valencia, and we take this class with Dr. Hurtak. And I said, I want to meet this man. And they said, well, he's going to be coming up and doing a lecture at Sonoma State in a week or two. And that was when we met. And as soon as I was in that lecture, I just resonated with the information he was bringing forth. And that was the beginning of our association. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Hurtak organized a meditation group a little north of San Jose that I was part of. And they were doing a chakra balancing meditation using what I believe was like a pitch pipe. And I said, I'm a musician. I could do something much more interesting and more healing than just a little pitch pipe. So I brought in my heavy electric piano. And the first time I ever played the Chakra Suite was in their meditation. So that was the beginning of my live performances of chakra balancing music, which has gone on to be performed live by me at conferences around the world. And that was my first album when the first independent multi-track recording studio opened up in San Jose. I was their first client, and that began my recording career, knowing nothing about how to market albums, nothing about how to publicize albums and promote them. So what I first started talking about was auras and electromagnetic energies. And I got to tell you, when I approached the media, approached TV or radio interviewers, they said, this is new age, woo-woo. We can't deal with that. So we're not going to have you on our program. We don't want to talk to you. But at the same time, the concept of stress the work by Dr. Hans Selye was coming out into the public. The concept of holistic health was coming out into the public. And I realized that what we were calling meditation and stress relief had a very interesting mutuality. And I could talk about stress relief, relaxation, and that was my entree into talking about the healing effects of music. Now, I wasn't an MD, and there were a couple times that, in fact, in 1993, myself and several other musicians and manufacturers of those flashing goggles of flashing lights and sound devices met with the representative of the FDA, who accused me and some of the others of making medical devices and said, your CD, we consider a medical device, sorry about that, because it affects the structure and function of the human organism. At which point I said, but when I look at the sunset, I get relaxed. And I said, is that, excuse me, why don't you bust the sun? And they said, the sun doesn't make a claim for relaxation on the back of its CD. So that was a tense moment, and we had to step back, talking about the truth of what the music could do. And that's why there wasn't much talk about healing music, excuse me, until 1994, when it suddenly became okay to talk about that. And I've been talking about that ever since. Excuse me. There's a lot of dust in the air from the smoke and the fires that we have. And even inside with my air filters, it will get through. Well, as I continued researching and doing new music, what was also clear, and going back to the original research, in which I also worked with Itzhak Bentov and used some of his proprietary equipment to measure the micromotion of the surface of the skin to confirm that the 7 keynotes, the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, related to the 7 chakras and the 7 colors that are coordinated to the chakras, were really what we were resonating with the music. So even if you didn't do any of the guided meditations, if you just played the music, your chakras would be aligned. What was also very important, that also goes back to that initial research with Itzhak Bentov, was that the 2 hemispheres of the brain would be balanced and would shift into a higher order of coherence. This was years before these words and brainwave entrainment as a concept made it out into the public, but it was the kind of background and proof that I needed to legitimize what I was speaking and talking about in media and in my own lectures and workshops and in the books that I was publishing. The first one, Tuning the Human Instinct, was my own book published by myself. The next one, Sound Health, was published by Harper and Row. Many of the chapters have wound up in other people's books. Interestingly, they just take my name off and put the information out there. But the information has gone out, and it's more true than ever. And some of the concepts that I've been talking about in terms of physical rhythmic entrainment and brainwave entrainment are still the fundamental ways that we respond to music on many levels. Let me give you an example. If I snap my fingers and you feel your pulse, in fact, why don't we just take a second and just get a sense of how fast your heart is beating or how fast you are breathing. If I snap my fingers and then speed it up, typically what happens is your heartbeat will speed up. There's a frequency following effect. Your breathing will speed up. And then as I slow it back down, the effect is so immediate. This is part of the rhythm entrainment, where an external stimulus entrains your body and forces it to synchronize with the external stimulus. Well, the same thing happens to our brain waves, whether, and it gets very subtle. It could be quick, fast music, will get your brain moving faster. But for meditation and healing, we want to slow down the brain waves. We want to increase the field of coherence, and we want to create more balance. Well, with most music, what we find, if you really analyze it, is that most music is left brain dominant, meaning that when we listen to that music, our left brain analyzes what's going on, and you don't get into a more meditative, relaxed state because part of your brain is always being busy. Here's another little example. If I sing this little phrase, watch what goes on with your breathing and with your mind. So if I sing this, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And how many of you could hear that note in your head? How many of you were holding your breath, waiting for me to sing the final do? I call that the scalus interruptus effect. Most people, whether they're trained musicians or not, will analyze, will anticipate, will predict where the music is going, which is fine most of the time, but for relaxation and healing and to increase coherence, not so good, because relaxation only happens in the present moment. You can't relax in the future. And with music that is always future oriented, you're always future tense. You need to be relaxed in the present moment. We didn't have the word mindfulness in 1975, but as the whole concept of mindfulness has moved into collective consciousness, part of what I realize is that when I am in the studio recording, I am always in a very mindful state. I clear my mind. I don't have preconceptions. I open up to the flow, and I get into the gap between the notes. I listen to the silence. I listen to the space between the notes. This is what Dr. Wayne Dyer and Dr. Deepak Chopra talk about in terms of the gap between thoughts. This is what I've been doing for 45 years. That's how I hear and play the music that I do. Well, now people are understanding what that means, but they don't realize that most of the music they're listening to for entertainment keeps them out of entrainment and brainwave entrainment to the deeper frequencies of alpha and theta brainwave entrainment. In fact, when my 2012 album, Deep Alpha, was nominated for a Grammy, Billboard and the Grammys called me up and said, "Congratulations, but you spelled entertainment wrong on your album." And I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "There's another word called entrainment," that they had no idea what it was. So I had to teach the Grammy people. Now, these were the office people. They were not the musicians, but I had to teach Billboard that entrainment was the correct word we're talking about. It's where the music will help you shift state and move into a higher place of balance and coherence. Now, one of the things that I wanted to share with you today, that this has been the historical overview, and I've taken this in to all the other recordings I've done, whether it's been with Paul Horn or Georgia Kelly, the wonderful harpist, Jorge Alfano, a wonderful flute player, but it's music that comes from a place of peace. And when you listen, whether you pay attention or not, and many people start off just listening to my music as background music. I was some of the first ambient music before that word changed definition, or people changed the definition to now include rhythms. Myself, Yassos, and other New Age pioneers worked with ambience where you didn't have a lot of structure, not traditional structure, where you didn't have the typical melody and chord progressions that most music has that keep you out of the present moment. Okay, now, coming back to this album, and again tying this in to my connection with Dr. Hurtak, is in that first meditation group was the mother who drove the students and the other people down to Cal Arts Valencia, who was also a psychic and whose mission was to introduce people to their spiritual guides. And when I was offered the opportunity, I said, sure. So I had one of my first, most powerful psychic readings where I was introduced to my spiritual guide and was told what my mission was. And my mission in this lifetime was to connect people to their spirituality through music. And that's what I've been doing ever since. It's what I was doing before that without knowing that that's why I was doing that. So it's just, again, an incredible continuity of connection that began in that context and has continued. I was also told that the music of Chakra Suite would be heard around the world. And that started when I was at the 1977 Festival of Mind, Body and Spirit in London, where people from Africa were already listening to my music, which was a complete shock at that point. How did they even find out about the album in Kenya and Nigeria? And we're using it for meditation. But what also was true is that the music, because it's a universal language, was being used to help people meditate and for healing in Japan, in South America, in Russia, much to my surprise, and many other places where people would recognize that there was something special going on. But it was all when people would listen individually. About a year ago, I was in my chiropractic practitioner's office waiting for her to come in and do the adjustment. They listened to Pandora, to have it playing as the soundtrack. And there was different music on while I'm waiting, and not too much was that interesting. All of a sudden, the first notes of Chakra Suite came on, which of course I recognized. And I immediately felt a very powerful shift in my head, in my brainwaves, a shift into a higher order of coherence. And in that moment, I also received a little download that said, millions of people who are now listening to the same streaming playlist, who will be listening to the same piece of music at the same time, are all going through the same simultaneous shift into a higher order of coherence as you are right now. And that has never been possible before streaming music technology. Now, up until that point, I did not have a great opinion of streaming music because the royalty base was much less than it was even on radio and certainly on CDs. But because now millions of people were shifting state at the same time, there was another phenomenon at work. And what this is, I would like to put out as my understanding of the process at work there, is that just like the 100th monkey effect and the whole concept of morphic resonance, I call that this is now, but most people have never thought of this. Thank you from Ayata, that we are all, when we watch Live Aid in 1985 or watch something on TV, we have, some million people, but it's just a one time, and that music, typically because it's rock, is not about inner music and inner harmony and meditation and balance and peace and enhancing immune system. The music that I've been doing on Chakra Suite and Deep Alpha and the other recordings takes you to a different place. Well, what Rupert Sheldrake was putting out into the world with his research and his first books on the nature of reality and morphic resonance, who really introduced that concept to the world, is as follows. Using an example of a rat running a maze. When the first rat runs a maze and learns how to do it, that makes it easier for other rats to run through the maze. The great story that accompanied the concept of a 100th monkey was that on an island of Japan, there were a tribe of monkeys. And one day, and they would be eating these sweet potatoes that researchers would throw in the sand. And one day, Mama Monkey washes off the sweet potato in the water, and voila, the potatoes are better. She teaches her kids, other monkeys learn it. And according to the myth or so, it's as if when a critical mass of consciousness, let's say 100 monkeys, start washing their sweet potatoes on island A, suddenly island B, 3 miles away, where there's no contact between the monkey tribes, they start washing their sweet potatoes also. Well, it wasn't exactly like that, but the concept is that there is a critical mass of consciousness. And I believe now, my intuitive take and what I've been told is that music like Chakra Suite, particularly Keynote C, the first one, the first chakra, because that also resonates with the Schumann resonance, the basic brainwave of the Earth itself, about 7.83 to 8 cycles per second, that this is, if people only listen to one track of the album, it's typically track 1, Keynote C, first chakra. And that is why that were such a powerful bit of information and experience. So the next time you hear this, I never know when it's going to play. So it's always a placebo-controlled, double-blind opportunity for me to experience that shift. And I've had it happen 2 other times. Since I don't listen to Pandora at home, it's only been 2 out of the 15 times that I've been at the chiropractor when that particular track comes on the soundtrack. But when it does, it is profound. So I would just put this out there. When that happens and you hear it, pay attention. Feel what you feel. Because not only is your biological, bioharmonics and the resonance happening immediately below the threshold of consciousness, your cells, your information field, your aura, your electromagnetic energy field recognizes the truth and power of that, and it helps you shift into a higher level of functioning. There's no training needed. Now you can enhance this with a guided visualization, but the beauty of it and why I was, in one sense, a good vehicle to bring this forth is because I did not come up through the traditional classical musical training. I did train very hard as a jazz musician and learned all the scales and the chords and what notes to play with these chords and got very good at that on trumpet. But trumpet as a healing instrument, not very useful. So that was when I really had to shift into working with the keyboard, and the instrument that I heard during that first meditation in the woods, November 1969, towards the middle of November, late November. At the time, I didn't even write down the date, but I know I had a 2-week round trip plane ticket, and I left from New York on 11/11/1969. So I was ready to go back to graduate school to study music and the healing powers. But what has come out is that it's more important now than ever with COVID-19 for us to enhance our immune system. And one of the things that happens when you get into a more relaxed state, your body and your brain work more in harmony. When you get your chakras tuned, you literally empower your innate intelligence, your innate healing energies to operate at a higher level. So in times like this, where it's so important to boost and enhance our own immune system, this is the kind of music that you listen to. Now, there hasn't been a lot of research testing other music yet. That's for you all to do. Find music that works for yourself. Obviously, I have the most data on my own music, but there are a lot of fine musicians out there. Unfortunately, there are also a lot of fake musicians or people who are just claiming certain things. When I put out my first album where I named it as Mindful Music and Mindful Piano, shortly thereafter, there were about 20 websites that called themselves mindful music. And hilariously, on one level, some of them were the least mindful music. They had the scaleless interruptus melody and harmony that you can't possibly stay in a non-predictive state with, but there's no rules that keeps them from putting a label of relaxation music or mindful music on what they do. So you need to pay attention to yourself, to feel what you feel and to do what you're doing, and allowing your body, even if it's only 5 minutes a day. Coming from New York, I've always been attracted to the concept of instant relaxation. And when I first went to the music therapist with my research, they said, your music doesn't conform to traditional classical rules of composition. And I said, that's exactly true. And that's why my music works so much better than traditional classical music for relaxation and healing and to get you into a deeper meditation state. Some of the music therapists have opened up, and I've had a lot of influence in that field over the years, but there are a lot of them who say if it's not classical music done by dead white European composers, we don't want to listen to it. So there's always individual preferences, and but the bottom line is, if you don't have 20 minutes, and I came from the background of coming from New York, and I remember saying to them, I don't have 20 minutes, or I don't have an hour to get relaxed. What do you have that'll get me there in 1 minute? And that's why I have 1 minute samples on my website. So literally within 1 minute, literally within several seconds, your brain waves will shift. And this is what we saw in the early research, and we still see it now, that your energy field will shift automatically because it's something that your cells recognize at an intuitive level, at a frequency level, that there's no thought involved. They recognize the truth of the situation. And as Bentoff said in his book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, if you ask a body, would you like to be resonated randomly or in a coherent manner, it would choose harmony, would choose coherence. So that's what we're offering in music as a way to get into that place for variety. And because I listen to my own music all the time, I'm always working on new albums. And over the years, I've produced over 100 albums. Many of them are major albums. Some of them are part of my subliminal affirmation series that takes the healing music and adds focused affirmations such as, I am healthy. I am a radiantly healthy and vibrantly healthy individual. If we're dealing with relaxation, I am relaxed. You can add your own affirmations to the music. You can call your own cell phone with music playing in the background and speak your own affirmations to yourself. I have the scripts for my subliminal albums on my website. They're on the CDs in the booklet. But the concept of positive affirmations, because most of us, certainly starting in the 70s, was when we started learning from the other great researchers and pioneers in the field of human potential, that we constantly, most people, have negative self-talk to ourselves. Oh, or our parents or friends, etc., would say, you can't do that, or you'll never be good at that. And we need positive self-talk to balance that out, and indeed to focus our consciousness on attracting to us what we want. The laws of attraction and The Secret were based on this, so putting out positive intention. And I can tell you that from the very first album I did, when I go to the studio, my intention is to bring through the highest and the best music that will serve the needs of my audience. After doing this and being invited to present and do a concert and workshops at the Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach, as I was rummaging through the library, I found a little tiny book called Music as the Bridge. And in there, as I'm reading it, from some of the readings of Edgar Cayce, there's one with the headline says, The Musician's Prayer. And it started at the bottom of the right-hand page and continued, and I was speaking the words as I turned the page. I recognized the basic concept of the prayer, and the prayer is just that. As a musician, my intention is to bring through the highest and the best. So my understanding is that was not the first time I've been involved in working with healing music and meditation music, but this is what I am doing now. And in the process, I had to learn to be an entrepreneur, to learn about marketing, things that I kept very far away from me early on. But because there was no one else doing what I was doing, when I would hire other people, they didn't produce good results. So I had to learn to do it myself, and that's why I've started my own independent record label, and I've been continuing to do that over the years. I've spoken at virtually all of the Whole Life Expos and the New Living Expos and the New Life Expos and the Conscious Life Expos in LA. And until travel got to be, let's see, and then I make a joke. Let's see what Bonnie is saying. I can't read the rest of it, but maybe we'll get back to that. We're coming up through the electromagnetic spectrum. Yes, Australia, the ambient. Look at this. So we have some great people coming in. Yes, Tim Weeder was there. That was an amazing conference in Australia also. But it's been such an honor and privilege to be in these major consciousness events like what Neil has put together with the portal to Ascension right now, to get a chance to share this information and to be someone who will serve to awaken the possibility for you as you are listening to this, to take back into your own life, to take a moment, and when you listen to music, even if it's only 1 minute of listening to good meditation music that gets you into state, because it can happen so quickly, is worth 20 minutes of listening to whatever you like to listen to for entertainment. Entertainment is not the same as brainwave entrainment in terms of getting you to the brainwaves of transcendence. And that's why you need to take responsibility for your own response ability, your ability to respond in a coherent fashion and tune your human instrument to a higher order of frequency and balance. So let's see, yes, this might be time to come back and bring in another question or a meditation. And if people do have questions, by the way, you can email me at info@innerpeacemusic.com or go to my website, and there are ways to contact me, or through Twitter. I don't do a lot on Facebook, but I look forward to any feedback or questions that people have that I can get back to you through email. Is probably the easiest way for me as we continue through this program and go on with the rest of our lives.
Thank you, Steve. And I know a lot of people would like to hear your music. Is there a place that they can go, maybe some samples or something like that? I know YouTube, it does, I mean, this, the way we're doing it with Zoom doesn't really come across so well.
That's right. Now, Neil has told me, because I sent him several of these albums I featured, Deep Alpha, Chakra Suite, Deep Theta, and the Sound Healing 432 anthology. He will be posting samples on this website, is my understanding. You can also hear samples at Spotify or Pandora, on my website, Amazon, Apple Music. In the field that I'm in, I don't even have a choice. Those services take an album and put it on there, even if they're not selling it. But because I've been around for 45 years, most of my music is available both through streaming and through samples. Amazon is one of the easiest places, but wherever you get it, you will be able to tune in. And within those samples, one of the things that I love about even the samples is that you can feel the effect right away.
Thank
And
you.
my YouTube channel is Steven Halpern Music, and you can tune into a lot of the music there as well.